All right, we are live and ready to go this morning. For those who don't know me, welcome. My name is Jeremy. This is the Practical IT channel. We do a live stream every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I was a little late getting the link out there today, but rest assured we are doing this, and hopefully we'll bring some good content to everybody. Good morning, David. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the stream. So I had a little monkey wrench thrown in the plan today. Watching your stream side by side with one Catherine is doing. Hope that's okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't realize Catherine and I were overlapping on time. So maybe I'll have to adjust my time a little bit going forward. But we'll see. I'll take a look at her channel and see if I can make an adjustment so that I'm not starting way later in the afternoon, but I want to keep it relatively in the same ballpark of time. So monkey wrenches seem to be flying into my streams a lot lately. Well, it happens. It happens. She's been on for 1 hour and 20 minutes. Okay, so she's probably going to wrap up in the next 20 or 30 minutes, I'd imagine. So she ran into challenges. Yeah. So my big topic for the day, I had wanted to cover, or at least kick off at the beginning of the stream, an install of CentOS Stream 9, which was just released this week. However, I had tried to plan ahead for this as well. I started the download of the ISO image and it failed. So I have no ISO to install from. So what we'll do instead is we'll just take a look at the new details that have come out for CentOS Stream 9. And I will bring this topic back in a future video so that we can cover it in a little more depth. So we'll kick things off with that. The link to the website that I'm using is being pasted in chat right now. So, and this is right from the CentOS people. So the propaganda may be high in this article. So they describe it as a continuous delivery distribution, providing each point release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So what they've done is they've taken what traditionally was CentOS and they've made it into CentOS Stream, which sits in between Fedora, which is sort of the development platform for Red Hat, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is their really stable version for enterprise. And so as things are stabilized in core, they're moved to stream before they end up getting moved on to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So this graphic on screen currently, whoops, I'm trying to enlarge the wrong window. The graphic on screen currently shows that CentOS Stream 9 is based on Fedora 34. And then Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 is based off Fedora 34 as well. And then Red Hat 9 will be based off CentOS Stream. So, like I said, as things stabilize, they will move from Stream to RHEL 9 and make that a little more stable. Now, this means that CentOS is no longer a one-to-one feature parity version with the current Red Hat Enterprise Linux that's available to businesses. In that case, then people would want to look at Elma Linux or Rocky Linux, or if you're in Europe somewhere, then you'd want to possibly look at Euro Linux, which is also based on recompiling the Red Hat Enterprise Linux source code, of course, changing logos and names throughout, but that's a fairly easy process to do, given that these distribution maintainers have had a lot of years experience doing this kind of thing. And so they developed tools or built tools on top of existing Unix type tools to allow them to, do the search and replace from a script. And once they do that and recompile everything, then basically they're able to work on their quality assurance before they release a version. So CentOS Stream is community, and so let's see, it can be downloaded as an ISO. We'll try this, at least kicking it off again. And so this is kind of weird the way they do this page. So CentOS Stream, you've got version 8 or version 9. And so clicking on the x86-64 link is going to directly start a download, which I guess in this case is 7.8 gigabytes. I'm not going to do that during the stream on this particular machine. But usually you would have a list of mirrors where you could grab the ISO from another site. So when I tried to take this URL, copy link, and go into Proxmox and do download from URL, it detects it as a malformed URL and does not detect the file name correctly, because you can't just enter into this field. You've got to query the URL, and instead of grabbing the CentOS Stream 9 latest x86-64 dvd1.iso file name, it grabs the file name mirror list, which is right here in the path. So uh, something's not jiving correctly with the way that they've set this up. And I'm hoping that since this has only been out for a few days, that there will be other places that will mirror the download. And well, there might be already. Let's take a look here. Maybe we can find something. Um, okay, well, let's pick on Canada. Maybe 8.5 is the latest they're showing. So we might be out of luck for a bit, since that initial ISO download just completely died on me. At 73% downloaded, it just stopped. But this will be interesting to see what they've done with it. I expect that it's going to be more of a rolling release type of thing, which would kind of make sense for being stuck in that middle ground between Fedora and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So I'm hoping that I can get a downloaded ISO here in the next week or so and be able to install it, and then we can just do a live demo and look through it next week potentially. But I know this whole change in direction for CentOS has ruffled the feathers of many people in the Linux community, and it will be interesting to see whether CentOS Stream is something that gains wide adoption or whether it's more used just for the development and stabilization of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Of course, with changes being made between CentOS Stream and RHEL. So unfortunately, that's all I can really show today on CentOS Stream 9. But we'll be back with this topic and revisit it in a future live stream so that hopefully we can work through questions and just see if we can even come to the conclusion of whether it's going to be a viable base for projects like Neth Server and others to build on top of, or if they will instead adopt Rocky Linux or Elma Linux or something else to be able to continue building their respective projects as they had on previous versions of CentOS. One of the big ones that is going to have to change direction a little bit is going to be XCPNG, which is an alternative to Proxmox, and something I used in between my first stab at Proxmox and my current run with Proxmox. And while I like that project, I'm much more comfortable with Debian-based systems. And that was one of the big reasons that I went back to Proxmox. Plus, I like the fact that Proxmox builds in the web-based user interface instead of having to build your first uh, virtual machine in order to run that. Uh, you know, it's not one of those awful scenarios. If that was all that was available, then I would work with it for sure. But I currently find Proxmox to be more compelling for my use cases. And as I try to mention in my videos, your mileage may vary. There's always more than one way to accomplish a given task when it comes to IT related subjects. So, all right, let me check my notes. I'm going to take this off screen and we'll check my notes here. Okay, so I guess this is backtracking a little bit. I rearranged my notes and I kind of messed them up. So I have recorded and it should be ready for release either Tuesday or Wednesday. I have recorded a new fog video using the development version of fog. And this will catch up with what is currently available. So if there's something that you've always wanted to see in a fog video, some feature that I may not have covered, so long as it doesn't involve me setting up a bunch of extra Windows machines or, trying to sysprep Windows or something like that, that's outside of the scope of what I will cover. Leave comments down in the comment section of this video, or if you're watching live, leave it in the chat, and I will try to include this in this current series on fog that I'm working to build. This may very well be the final series on fog that I do, because development has slowed so much that it doesn't make sense to continue making videos on the same basic version of fog if things aren't changing. In its place, I have started mapping out what a video series on Clonezilla would look like, specifically Clonezilla server versions. And they have the Clonezilla Lite server and then the Clonezilla, the actual installed server version to choose from. And if you're going to be doing mass deployments of things, that's where I'm going to sort of be concentrating on my demonstrations. For single computers, I still recommend, and a new version should be dropping anytime now. I still recommend Rescuezilla. As a backup, I do keep an ISO of Redo Rescue on my bootable thumb drives. But my preference at this point in time is Rescuezilla. So that's something to look forward to as we go through the rest of December and into the new year. There's new fog videos coming, and as far as the imaging aspect of the channel that has been fairly popular, I will be concentrating going forward on Clonezilla and Rescuezilla. The latter of which is basically a pretty wrapper around Clonezilla. And maybe one day there will be a Rescuezilla server that is, pretty to look at and sort of steps into the shoes of Fog as far as an easy to use after it's installed, an easy to use solution for large scale imaging. So, all right, welcome James Highsmith to the chat and to the stream. Nice to have you here. I don't believe I've seen your name before, so welcome. We started off today talking about CentOS Stream, and I'm just kind of catching people up with a little bit of news and plans of what I've got in the works going forward. So, microphone has a mind of its own this morning. Okay, so moving on, unless there are any questions. I don't often cover Mac specific items on the channel, but I've got a tool that I just started working with in the last couple of days. And I wanted to show off just a little bit. This tool is called Mind Node. I suppose I should put it back on screen. There we go. And I'll do this. So Mind Node is an attempt at a mind mapping tool. And as you can see here, I've started mapping out what topics I might include in a future video on Debian-based server products. So, I've got some command line tools, I've got log files down here, and I've started breaking the log files out into their usage, how to view them, or one of many possible ways to view them, and an example of when this might be useful to somebody using a Debian or Ubuntu-based server operating system. There are mind map tools for Linux. This is just one I happened to grab because it was quick and easy to put my fingers on. And with the M1 Mac Mini, I wanted something that was likely to be native. And getting this from the App Store, I met that criteria. So, adding a node, you come to where you want to add it, and it gives you a little box. And then you just fill in the box, add software, update software, remove software. And that's all the description I'm going to add at the moment. But, for a video planning tool, I'm experimenting with different things to help with the planning out of my future videos. And this was one tool that I've seen suggested, is using mind mapping tools, not this specific piece of software necessarily, but mind mapping software is going to work basically the same in this sort of tree structure. So that, I can plan things out and decide how to split things up again, so that the videos have enough substance to be useful, but aren't so packed full of heavy material that they get too long and just unwieldy for the viewers, which is something I try to avoid as much as possible. Some of the topics I cover, I can't completely avoid that in a productive way, I guess. But just to uh, show what's available out there, uh, we do alternative 2.net. Do an alternative 2, you put in MindNode, which is the piece of software I had up on screen just now. I like this website because you can filter, and if you want something that's specifically Linux, it will give you just that. Now, FreeMind I've used previously, but that has been discontinued since 2016. Some of these are paid and proprietary, although very cross-platform. FreePlane is, as you can see, not pretty looking, but it is cross-platform, Mac, Windows, Linux, BSD. It is based on Java. And of course, there are web-based softwares available too. Unfortunately, some of these that look kind of interesting have been discontinued. This one since 2015. But the point being that there are tools out there. This might be something that would lend itself well to a web-based tool. I tend to recommend and gravitate myself towards cross-platform tools, preferably things that are free and open source. That's one of the reasons that I can so smoothly move between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS and have most of my workflows intact because I use software that's common to the three platforms. So this one here looks kind of interesting, but the website's no longer available again. Well, so that looks pretty graphical. Thwart space. Mind mapping. It's a 3D mind map of your thoughts. So it is proprietary, unfortunately, but it is available for Windows, Linux, Android, iPhone, and iPad, which means that with an M1 Mac Mini, I could run the iPhone or iPad version on my Mac. Although not ideal, it could be a means to an end to fill the need of a piece of software like this. Now, something else that they have as an alternative here, suppose I could bring that up further so my cursor is not behind my head, is diagrams.net. This is open source and online. And maybe not as easy to use for mind mapping exercises. However, it could be useful for this. Again, it is I believe that's a free one even. There's I don't know. I may even have an account. Oh yes, they save to your Google Drive. Let's save to device, create new diagram. And they don't really have something specific to mind mapping. Well, maps. So you could do something similar using this sort of layout here. Not quite as automatic, but in a pinch, you could use it. So, all right. Well, anyways, that's a look at mind mapping tools. Mind Node is the tool on Mac OS that I installed to play with. And diagrams.net is a web-based tool that you could use for similar purposes. And unfortunately, too bad that there aren't more alternatives and ones that are freely available. So let's see. I'm sure there are a bunch that are Windows only. Lucid Chart, I believe, is paid. Xmind is paid proprietary. Okay, Lucid Chart is freemium. Then we've got a bunch of discontinued ones. Freeplane. So, like I said, although not as pretty, it is freely available. And, with a little bit of a learning curve, it could be what you might want to use for your mind mapping exercises. So we look at their official website. Let's see. They're at version 1.9.11. And they've got some videos up on how to use it. And yeah, this I would say could be a good solution, albeit with a bit of a steeper learning curve. Now, I will say that the downside of Mind Node that I found almost immediately was that once you detach a node, it doesn't let you reattach it unless you go up to the next paid version. So I just installed the free version just to kind of play around and see if this would be a useful tool for my planning purposes. I think it will be, at least in the early brainstorming type stages of planning for a video. And excuse me, we'll see how things go from there. I try not to buy software that's only available on one platform. So I likely won't buy this, the paid version of this tool. And I don't think the export options are going to make it terribly useful, although it does export to FreeMind and Mind Node. which but not free plain. So it may or may not be able to be exported and continue this tree in another piece of software. That's something I will have to experiment with, and you know, like I said, I've experimented with mind mapping tools a little bit in the past. This is my first stab at looking at things in the last few years. But I feel like I'm in a place where I've got some ideas and I need to drill down on those ideas. And this is one way to do that in a productive, hopefully, manner. So, all right, we are up to 5 people in the viewing the video. Welcome, everybody. So this is where we are going to switch gears again a little bit and move into what I hope does not crash and burn on me and becomes a demo. And that is the new version of Ventoy. So, hello, Carlos. Welcome. So, I want to take myself off screen here. Also allows me to get a little drink of something. That's much better. Okay. Get that out of the way. Ventoy. This week released version 1.6.2. And one of the new pieces that they've included with this is a GUI plugin configurator. They called it Ventoy Plugs On, which is kind of a weird name, but maybe it's translated from another language. And so this is available on Windows. Here, run the Ventoy Plugs On exe, select your device, and click the Start button. On Linux, open a terminal, run Ventoy shell Ventoy's plugs on Ventoy plugs on.sh/dev/sdx, of course, where dev sdx is the device name of your USB stick. So before we can do that, we want to look at what we've got here. And if we do mount, let's see. Well, there's an easier way to do that. Let's see. This is using an old version. It's Sparky 32-bit. So that is, yeah, that's, we're going to have to install Ventoy on this stick first. So let's go ahead and get that prepped. Okay. let's okay, so you can either do the command line version and specify the name of the uh, device, or we can do Ventoy GUI 8664, and if you look at that, that is not what I expected to see. Okay, we will circle back to the Linux version. Let's jump instead over to our Windows box. And this will bring up the, once we install this, and it does detect our 4 gig flash drive. So we install, let's see, before we do that, we want to enable secure boot support. We can leave it at MBR. That's fine. It's only a 4 gig. And yeah, that's good. So we install this on the flash drive. Yes, everything's going to be lost, and that's a double check. So it's going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So that is installed. So we can close this utility, come back to our downloads, our Ventoy folder. And we've got the plugin configurator. And we select the 4 gig generic flash disk and say start. And this will allow us we'll do that later. This will allow us to make customizations. And there are a bunch of options on the left side. So let me make this a little bigger. Hopefully that's helpful, everybody. Yeah, so this has all kinds of different settings that previously you would have had to jump into a configuration file to access these items. Since Ventoy is based on Grub, which is a bootloader for Linux mainly, all of the themes that work with Grub will also work with Ventoy. But in here, you can also set things like your graphics mode. So if you want it to default to full screen, full HD, you can select 1920 by 1080. If you're using legacy systems, you may want it to default to 800 by 600. So you've got a lot of options in here that you can drill into and, make changes. Set menu alias for directory. As you can see, some of these dialogues are not fully translated, so I don't even know where to begin to translate that. nevertheless, this is a pretty amazing tool. Auto install plugin. Again, things are not completely translated yet, but you get the idea of what you are able to do with this. Persistence plugin, injection plugin, boot configuration, replace plugin, password. So a boot password, an ISO password. And so this is pretty granular in here. So you could basically set up a Ventoy based USB stick that would be unusable if you lost it because nobody would have your password. And in all honesty, they'd likely just reformat it anyways. Password plugin, image list plugin. Again, there are some translation issues. I'm not entirely sure here if they're let's see, a dud plugin, and that seems to be the last item. But if we open their official plugin document, you know, they'll go through a lot of these options and explain what you're supposed to expect for each of them. And actually, that did a nice job. That linked directly to the option I most recently had open. Driver update disk plugin. So, like I've said in the past, Ventoy is currently my tool of choice for my USB sticks. I was previously using Yumi, which is a Windows-only tool. I suppose you could run it under Wine in Linux, but I tend not to like to run Windows software on Linux if I can avoid it. So, yeah, the other nice thing about Ventoy, I'll exit the configurator. Once you've configured Ventoy, and I'm going to eject this and plug it back in. The nice thing about Ventoy is that once you've done the initial prep of the USB stick, so we've got Ventoy here. You can take any ISO that you've got, and installing it on the USB stick is as easy as dragging the ISO image over. And it will then appear in the boot menu when you boot from the USB stick. So this happens to be a slow stick, but thankfully the Gparted ISO is relatively small as well. So I purposely didn't pick like an Ubuntu installer just because it would be a little more time consuming to copy that over. Are there any questions so far while we're waiting for this copy process to happen? I will jump back to the Linux box and take a look at that. I'm just unsure why the disk was showing up as 15 gigs when I'm sure that that's a 4 gig stick. But we'll take another look at that. So okay, now I've got my cursor back. So just to show that this would work, before we jump back to Linux, we could set this up such that we're going to take that off. And can we set up some USB pass-through? Generic mass storage. So that's good. And then if we come back to storage, let's see. It may have been formatted with Linux, but usually the funkiness that you see on Windows when a system is, or when a disk is formatted with Linux, isn't the same funkiness that you see on Linux when the disk is formatted with Linux. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. What I wanted to try to do here is end up booting this system from the USB stick, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to accomplish that. Let's say okay to that and go back into settings. Maybe it will cooperate. Maybe it won't. Okay, well, let's start this and we'll just see. No, that's not going to work for me today. All right, no harm, no foul. So what I was going to do is I was going to try to demonstrate that booting in the VM, but that's all right. Let's exit VirtualBox and we'll jump back to the Linux machine. And see what we can do. So this should have been, it should be the only USB stick plugged into this system. So I'm going to just go with it because I don't have anything on it that needs to be salvaged. We'll say okay. And the second time. And see what it says when it's done. So I am going to properties. It still shows as a 16 gig total capacity. All right, well, there's a way we can test that. That's not a big deal. So I should have at least one ISO image here on this machine, and I've actually got a bunch of ISO images. Let's just take Rescuezilla because that's small, and we'll move that or copy it over to Ventoy. I can't believe it copied that quickly. 843.7 megabytes. All right, that's impressive. Okay, so what I want to do at this point is we want to eject Ventoy. And we will exit our Ubuntu machine and return to Windows for a moment. And we're going to eject the Ventoy that was on the Windows box and plug in the one that I had used on Linux. And see what we've got to work with. So it's showing the ISO image. I'm not 100% convinced that completely copied. But in Windows, it shows up as two devices. So the VTO Ventoy EFI is the Ventoy prepared partition, and drive D, the just Ventoy by itself, is the sort of repository for where you want to dump the ISO images. So, excuse me. No, that's not what I want. Go away. Let's do it this way. That's what I wanted. And yeah, that's showing up as a 16 gig, even on Windows. Okay, maybe that's an oddball, and that one is actually 16 gigs. Since this is one of those cheapy USB sticks that I got for a specific purpose, mainly using for boot discs like this and ones that I could give out to other people. I wouldn't be surprised if one of a different capacity got in the batch that I received. And that's all right. It happens. It happens when you're buying things in bulk that you'll sometimes get something that's a little weird. Also, it could be a format issue somewhere along the line. It's interesting though that another disc that I had that I'm sure came from the same order um, was only a 4 gig. So let's see. We'll verify. Yeah. I guess I shouldn't have closed that terminal window, but that's all right. Yeah, that one shows as 3.72 gigs and 32 megs. So the EFI partition is the same size on both. It's the actual storage area that's different. Oh well, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I will have to play with this on an actual machine and see if the other one with the different size actually boots properly. But yeah, that's in a nutshell a little bit about the new Ventoy with the configurator that's now available. It will be interesting to see how they refine this over time, and if other people start making use of it. So they've also got, and I'm not sure how recently this was added, and maybe it's always been here and I just hadn't paid attention to it. Um, they've got this concept of Ventoy compatible. And this is, I guess some things you can do to test to see if your operating system is Ventoy compatible. So if you were doing a custom build of Linux for something, you could run this script and make sure that you can use your generated ISO with Ventoy. So their tested ISO list keeps expanding. It's pretty huge on the Linux side. It will even boot VMware ESXi, Citrix Zen Server, XCPNG installers. Of course, as far as Proxmox, that's actually built on Debian, so that's a non-issue. I've used that before. There's Partition Magic, if anybody out there still uses that. Just all kinds of stuff. Open Media Vault. So that gives a little bit of a rundown on Ventoy and a few things that are new. They have plugins. I'm sure more of those are coming. I've never really spent much time in their forums, but usually utilities like this, especially ones that are available on Linux, have a pretty healthy forum. There's almost 3,000 posts in general, and almost 400 in the plugin forum. So, if there's something that I haven't covered, I do not claim to be an expert on Ventoy. It was pretty much a drop-in replacement for Yumi for my use case. Because with Yumi, you had to download the ISO image in order to have it transferred over. And with Ventoy, you just have to prep the disk and then copy. On Windows, you can use an enhanced copy utility like Terra Copy, which seems to work quite well. I've got that on my Windows 10 box over here. I don't think I've got it on this box yet, but good things happening with Ventoy. Now, one other thing I wanted to .net. It is a .com. Okay. I did want to mention just briefly Rescuezilla. When Shashin popped on he didn't come into a live stream, but he was in the comment section, I believe, on one of my previous videos and commented that he was shooting for November for release of version 2.3. So I would expect that about any time now, since we're into December a few days. And once that is released, I will be putting together a few videos. One I'm going to do is just going to focus on the new version of Rescuezilla, and then I will likely do another sort of shootout video as far as comparing Rescuezilla to Redo Rescue. And we might look at Fox Clone one more time and just kind of compare the three and gauge when they might be useful for particular use cases. Again, my go-to software is Rescuezilla, but I have found recently there were one or two edge cases that Rescuezilla didn't work on a particular machine and Redo Rescue did. So, I do keep a copy of Redo Rescue around. Again, being a free tool and a small ISO at that, I put it on my utility disks. It's one less thing I have to worry about if I'm in a situation where Rescuezilla doesn't work for me and want to try an alternative. So, despite the fact that this website has not been updated to reflect the current version, if you go to downloads, and I don't know if you can read that down at the bottom, I guess I can just click that. If you go to download it, we'll wait for it to pop up here. This is the Redo Rescue 4.0 ISO and not 3.0 like the website was still indicating as far as version 3.0 now available. My understanding is that the big difference between version 4 and version 3 is the updated underlying OS. And as far as features, it did not change in any substantial way. As always, your mileage may vary. I am not directly related to either project. I just like passing on what I use so that it may be of use to somebody else, somebody that may not have known about the utility. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Um, Let me check my notes one more time. I think we're actually running ahead of schedule. Um, I did not pull news items this week. I was busy getting ready for my nieces to visit me. They came Friday night and stayed till yesterday. And so my day yesterday was pretty much shot for doing additional prep work for this video. So, the last thing I was going to mention is that Endeavor OS 21.4 has been released. Okay. Endeavor OS is a rolling release based on Arch Linux. So, if you install Endeavor OS, then you can be one of those fanboys that goes around saying, "By the way, I run Arch." Um, it gives you an easier installer, and a few things that they've customized a bit. But underneath it is Arch, just like when you're running Mint. Underneath it's Ubuntu with tweaks, and Ubuntu is Debian with tweaks and some changes. So if Endeavor OS is something that's interesting to you, um we'll see. I'll jump over to their page. The Atlantis release is in orbit. So it's a, very nice looking, from this screenshot, a very nice looking distribution. There are always things that you can change and customize. You get your choice of many different flavors: XFCE, Mate, Cinnamon, Gnome, Plasma, Budgie, LXQT, i3, which is a tiling window manager, BSPWM, which is another tiling manager, and Sway is a tiling manager specifically for the Wayland compositor, and it's basically a drop-in replacement for the i3 Windows Manager from up here, which i3 works with X11, Sway works with Wayland, and so they're kind of complementary projects, I guess you could say. So, this I've got a very clean looking website. I appreciate that. But yeah, you can grab this and take a look. It's one of those things that's at least worth an install in a VM, and it might be something that you like. I tend to test out a couple of Arch-based distributions throughout the course of a year. Sometimes I'll make a video, sometimes I won't. My largest experience base is in the Debian ecosystem. So Debian proper, Ubuntu, Mint, and there are a few others out there. Of course, Proxmox VE being Debian based. You know, kind of keeps everything under one umbrella for what I run on the Linux side of things. And, you know, from a maintenance perspective, that's nice. You know, I expect in the next year, probably by mid 2022, I will discard Windows 10, and my only Windows box will be this Windows 11 machine I've got here. I don't use Windows other than mainly for testing and to support a few clients. And at least at home, I don't. When I'm at work, I use what I'm told to use and, you know, maintain and whatnot. At home, I like to keep things as simple as possible, and you know, not have to spend all my free time doing system administration tasks. So that's again something to consider. You know, if your hobby is having as many different Linux distributions running on your home network as you can, and you want to have experience and learn all of them as much as possible, more power to you. I experiment, but my core Linux pursuits are based in the Debian type ecosystem. All right, enough of my rambling. Are there any questions or comments from anybody that's watching at the moment? David or Carlos or James or anybody that I might have missed in the chat that might still be with us. This was sort of an odd week, and with some extra activities I had going on and relatives visiting, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I didn't have the extra time to track down another CentOS Stream 9 ISO to make that demo work. So hopefully you will all have mercy on me and still consider liking the video. So thank you, James, for the comment. I appreciate that. Just out of curiosity, if you don't mind answering, but feel no obligation to do so. Have you viewed any of my other videos? Is there a particular topic that you're interested in that I might already have a video on, or could update a video to be a little more current? I'm always looking for some feedback from people, and you know, when I can get a new person to engage, then that's even better. So grab another quick drink here. I'd be interested in hearing more about Rescuezilla. All right. So let me see if I've got that. available here. One of the places I'm sure I've got it. So Rescuezilla, you could consider that as, there we go, a disk cloning tool. Let me fire up VirtualBox here, and we'll just pick a virtual machine, and we will select add ISO focal choose, and then we want to make sure that we're booting from the optical disk first. And everything else is good. So what you get with Rescuezilla, it's a utility boot disk. And see if we can get it a little larger here. Let's do scaled mode. All right. So my apologies for this being a little out of whack as far as the screen resolution. So when it starts up to Rescuezilla, the application. This is a minimal Ubuntu OS underneath. So you can back up, restore, and you can clone. You can also, this is a beta feature that you can look at an image file created with it. So if we were to, for instance, do backup, it just kind of puts you through a wizard. Back up the selected hard disk. So this is the virtual hard disk. Say next. Backup of drives without a partition table and no file system is not yet supported. That's interesting. I may have discovered a bug. Okay. So basically, yes, it would work with your Windows 10 machine. It runs you through a wizard type. Let's fix this screen resolution. Runs you through a wizard type setup. And then you can back up to a disk, such as an external hard drive. It also lets you back up to a network share. Since this is Linux based, if you were to back up to an external drive, it would need to be formatted with a Linux file system. If you back up to a network location, you can back up to something with that's available over CIFS or SMB, and that would include, a Windows server, a NAS box, such as a Synology, a QNAP, or Open Media Vault. Think that doesn't have any pass through on that. Interesting. But it's very useful for that type of thing. If I can, there we go. Let me jump back here. My channel. I've actually got a whole series on a playlist on Rescuezilla. So I will drop that in the chat here, and you can feel free to watch, one or as many of those videos as may be relevant to you. For a Windows 10 box specifically, you should be okay as long as you can select your boot device when you start the machine. So you'd want to boot from a USB stick, and make sure you have a network destination available or a Linux file system formatted external hard drive. So being a Windows user, I would suggest to you that you go the network option. That would probably be easier. So if you have a second Windows machine, you could do a folder share from that machine and be able to back up to it with Rescuezilla. So under the hood, Rescuezilla is it's basically a GUI built on top of Clonezilla. The image files are compatible, and that is one of the things that makes it so compelling to me, because there is an alternate tool that I can use or obtain quickly and easily if I'm in a situation I need to and I don't have a Rescuezilla disk with me, or if their site is down and I can't grab an ISO for whatever reason. So hopefully that will get you pointed in the right direction. And excuse me, if there's something specific to Rescuezilla you'd like to see covered in the future, please leave me a comment on one of these videos, and I will try to address that going forward. Like I said, once the new Rescuezilla version drops, hopefully sometime this month, I will be doing some updated videos on Rescuezilla and then, comparing it to other tools. Welcome, Andre. Thank you for coming, even though you are close to the end. Stream didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do today, but that was kind of my own fault for having other things going on this week and not pushing myself to get the prep done like on Tuesday when I actually had a little time. So let's see. Wondering if Rescuezilla can make a backup to an internal drive. Yes. So let me jump back over here. Go back to the Windows machine or the Ubuntu machine. I don't think I've got a Windows VM. I don't have a Windows VM on here, but we'll just take this test VM and we'll make a couple modifications right here real quick. Like, so right now this has a 32 gigabyte virtual hard drive. And we're going to add, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's cancel that. Okay, let's look at settings. Okay. So we want to add another disk, hard disk, and we're going to create, and in this case, we're going to create a slightly larger disk, and we're going to make this a 40 gigabyte disk. Create and choose. So we've got the second disk there, and then we'll come here and we will select Rescuezilla. Okay. And check this one more time. System. Optical disk is the first boot item. So if we jump back into Rescuezilla here, and again, my apologies for this funkiness where it's so small. Welcome, Joseph. I might be interested in trying Fedora, but I'm not too familiar with Red Hat distros. I don't have a current Fedora video, but that's certainly something we could do. Once upon a time, I started off with Linux with a Red Hat distribution back in 1997. But I've tended to go with more Debian type things since then. Let's see. I think we have to do scaled mode. That looks better. Still a little distorted, but better. Okay, so if you want to do internal disks, you can do a clone operation, and it gives you some information here. But if you do next, it should identify 2 disks, and it does in this case. So again, you'd select a source disk and click next, and your destination disk, and click next. And you want to copy both partitions. This is Linux again. In Windows, you probably have, I think there's 3 partitions by default in Windows. The EFI partition, the actual Windows install, and then the rescue or recovery partition. So you'd want to do all of those, and then it's just a matter of verifying that you want to do this, and it gives you one last chance to backtrack, say yes. And to me, this doesn't really make a difference because it's a virtual machine. But it will clone the source drive to the destination drive, and then you could theoretically take out the original drive and switch to using the drive you cloned as the boot disk. There might be You may have to change your UEFI settings to point directly at that disk. You also may have to make an adjustment or do a recovery on Windows to make sure everything is pointed to the proper places for booting Windows. There's still a little bit of a few hoops that you have to jump through sometimes to when you use Linux tools to do cloning on Windows systems. It's not near as bad as what it was even 5 years ago. And that is specifically if you're doing a direct one-to-one clone. Now, in the scenario I previously described where you would, clone first from the source drive to a network location and then restore it to your secondary drive. That is still effectively a clone. It's just a clone with an extra step and a little bit more time investment. And, but 99+% of the time when I've done that, even with a Windows drive, I've had zero issues with it. So there's always that edge case where a problem could happen. But in my experience using Rescuezilla and, redo backup and restore before that, it was not an issue. Okay, so this is saying that it's completed. And if you go to next, it takes you back to the Rescuezilla application at the beginning. So you could at this point, look at something like gparted, which would let you look at the drives that are installed. And so the source disk, the 32 gig virtual disk in this case, SDA1 in Linux terms, is 31 gigs for the main part of it, 975 for the swap, and then you've got 1 megabyte unallocated. And if you look at the next drive, it has an additional 8 gigs that are unallocated. So theoretically, you could use this, you could format it and use it for, some little files you want to tuck away. But that's the size of a thumb drive, really, and a small thumb drive anymore. But yes, there are a couple of methods that you could use to clone a Windows disk to another drive. And yeah, it's like I said, Rescuezilla is a handy tool, and it's one that I use quite a bit. So, all right, moving back to Joseph's next comment. I started out with Linux Mint. Now I'm running Arch and KDE Neon on my PCs. Very nice. I've played with Arch a bit. I'm still not 100% comfortable with all their tools that they have available. Give me just a second. Oh, much better. Still not 100% comfortable with all their tools that they have available that are, a little bit different than Debian-based distributions. but it's for enthusiasts, it's gaining quite a bit of popularity. So I want to sort of the goal of one of my goals with this channel is to be useful to both uh groups of people, those that are mainly Windows users and are dabbling with Linux for the first time, or are more interested in the sort of Linux appliances or Linux utilities that can be of use to them, and also to the enthusiasts. Um, I've got since I run a small IT business on the side, I've got customers that I need to be able to support Windows, Mac OS, and uh, so I've got both of those on my network as well at home. But also, I keep the Linux pieces around for my own enjoyment. Um, I have no great love of Windows. Um, it's a means to an end. I make money with Windows for sure, but um, I don't get the thrill out of using Windows. It's not as exciting to me as using Linux, and um, even Mac OS being based on BSD Unix, and being on a completely different chip than Windows, with the M1 being an ARM chip. I find Mac OS more exciting than being on Windows. Um, but I like to try to scratch the itch of enough people that they come back and there's something here for as many people as possible on the channel. And so, for instance, last week I released a video on Aume Backupper, which is primarily a Windows based backup utility. And they do have you have to install the Windows version, but then they do have a Linux based ISO that they can generate for you, and it will back up Linux partitions as well. But I do not find that as compelling when you have to start by installing it on a Windows box, and not every Linux user has a Windows box or wants to pay $50 for a utility. So, but I do try to hit every um, quadrant for making the channel of a resource to other people. So the Mac users kind of get left out in most cases, today being a little bit of an exception, covering a piece of Mac specific software. I'm doing a few more Windows videos these days, but my primary and original goal for the channel was Linux stuff. So I've tried to stay true to that as much as possible, but there is this side of me that wants to see how big I can build this channel, someday, and just see what we can do. So James, you're very welcome. And yeah, Joseph, I played with the AUR, and that is a very compelling reason to use Arch. I have had some pretty good luck with that when I have been running an Arch distro, Arch based distro. So, as I mentioned when we first talked, I preferred Linux as well. Unfortunately, I was captured and made part of of the Borg collective. And that begs the um that begs me to um put up this image. All your base R belong to us. kind of a Borg before the Borg. Um, uh, yeah. So for anybody that might be uninitiated, this was part of a video game called Zero Wing that came out in 1991 on the Mega Drive, which we know in the US as the Sega Genesis. And the Japanese to English translation was poorly done, shall we say. Um, so yeah, I don't often bring this up, but this just seemed like the perfect time to to slip this in here. Um, and if you look for Zero Wing, what is it? Zero Wing Remix or something like that on YouTube. Um, uh, yeah. If you search "all your base are belong to us" on YouTube, they made a whole video about it. There's one that takes Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody and integrates it into this. It's kind of humorous, but anyways, uh, and Joseph, Garuda Linux is an itch I've been waiting to scratch. Yeah, I've played with Garuda a little bit. Um, I had to repurpose the box I had it running on, so it didn't stick around for a long time. But I like uh, I like what they've done with their theming. Um, it's really well done. They use Btrfs or Betterfs, depending on which camp you fall into on that. But these sort of neon look icons are just they're cool in my book. It's different enough that it would be easily be a conversation starter with people who may be uninitiated. So yeah, I will I'm going to put that on a sticky note right now. My wall is starting to fill up with ideas, but Garuda may be one that I revisit because as you can see on screen, it's got several desktop flavors available: KDE, XFCE, GNOME, LXQT with KWin, Wayfire, Qtile, BSPWM, i3WM, and Sway. And it's everybody and their brother does GNOME videos anymore. It seems to be the more popular of desktop environments at the moment. Um, and so I'm not going to completely abandon GNOME for my videos, but I was a KDE user for a long, long time because I'm going to date myself a little bit here. Back in the day, before Y2K, um, KDE was more stable than GNOME. And this was like pre 1.0 versions for both projects. Uh, and I'll add the caveat that it was more stable. KDE was more stable than GNOME on the hardware that I personally had at that point in time. And with that caveat, that should keep me out of trouble with too many people that will watch this long into a potential replay. So, on that note, we've been going for 1 hour and 51 minutes, almost 52 minutes. Are there any final questions before I start the wrap up on this live stream? I try to keep things under the 2 hour mark. On a very, very few occasions I've gone 2.5 hours, but by the time I approach 2 hours, I'm starting to itch to get up and move around again. So while I stall for a minute to give people time to ask any final questions or make final comments, I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out today. I suppose I should bring myself back on screen for this. Thank you to everybody that came out today. I appreciate that. We had a couple of new people, James and Joseph. So welcome to the group and the community around this channel. And I hope the two of you will consider looking at some of the videos I've published if you haven't already, and coming back to future live streams. As I mentioned at the beginning, I do live stream every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. There may be a possible exception coming up. Do I have a terminal window open? There may be an exception coming up. I am going to be doing a little bit of traveling starting the 29th of December through the 6th of January. So there may or may not be a live stream on Sunday, the 2nd of January. If there's not a live stream, I will announce that on my community tab ahead of time. And there may be a premiere that day in place of the live stream. But since I will be traveling and away from my camera and my microphone and lighting, I'm not inclined to do a live stream while I'm on the road. I've done that once or twice before, and it's worked, but not been the experience that I'm familiar or more comfortable with. So more details on that will be coming as we get closer to the new year. But that is the one date that I have in mind that I may or may not be doing a live stream. I'm not 100% decided yet. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll try it and do it from my laptop and see how things go. where I'm going to be visiting and staying with friends for a few days. I could reasonably tote an extra monitor with me to be able to set up to have my more familiar dual monitor setup going to manage the live stream. And I've got a USB mic that I can use, and of course I could take the USB webcam with me, so I can make it happen. The lighting might not be what we're used to for these, but other than that, it should be all right. So, all right. Last couple comments, and then we'll wrap this up. Let's see. If I install Linux on an external solid state drive, should I go with Fedora, Garuda, or Mint 20.3? If those are the three I had to choose from, I would probably be more inclined to go with Garuda. Just to challenge myself to learn something that I haven't invested a lot of time into learning, and that's Garuda specifically, and spending more time with Arch in general. It really comes down to your comfort level with Linux. If you are still rather new to Linux, then Fedora or Mint might be a better fit for the short term. But that would be my thought process on it. Now, one thing I will say, like I mentioned, I started using Linux in 1997. So there's not too much that I haven't attempted at least once in Linux. I've not run Gen 2. That's one of the few things on my list. I've not done much with tiling window managers, although that's something that is starting to pique my interest a bit. And Arch has probably the lowest amount of my time that I've invested in it of the different Linux distribution bases. So I'm really comfortable with Debian based systems. I can get around Red Hat based, Fedora based, CentOS type systems fairly easy with, resources available to me. Arch, there are still times that I hit points that I need to walk away because I get frustrated. But that's part of learning something new. You don't want to beat yourself up too hard when you get frustrated with something. You want to take a little time, regroup, and attack it again. So, all right. I've never worked with Btrfs. So ZSH is not a kernel. That's actually a shell, like Bash. But ZSH is not bad. It's now the default on Mac OS, so I've been using that a little bit more. I go back and forth on my Linux systems between Bash and ZSH, just because Bash has been around for so long and the standard for so long that I'm hesitant to switch from it. But at the same time, I catch myself saying, when I say that out loud, and it's like, that's the same argument people use for sticking with Windows. I've used it and I've stuck with it for so long, So, Btrfs is, it's solid once you install on it, you don't really notice the difference, but it does have capabilities of snapshotting and different things that you can use, similar to ZFS or ZFS, as our friends across the pond would say. But yeah, I will look forward to hearing more about your experiences as you go forward. Yeah, the Zen kernel. Gotcha. So the Zen kernel, from my understanding, and I haven't looked into this deeply, it's just a variation of the Linux kernel that is compiled with different options. And I believe Zen is one that's used for distributions that are a little more geared towards people that want to do gaming on Linux. It's supposed to give you a little bit extra performance, better frame rate in games and different things of that nature. Please don't take my word on this as gospel, because I have not researched it extensively, but just in passing what I have read, that's my understanding of it. And for all I know, I may have it mixed up with something else. Anyways, last few comments. I think I started with Slackware somewhere around 1987. Well, you'd have to be off on that a little bit, David, because the Linux kernel didn't even exist until 91. So it'd have to be somewhere after 91. Somewhere after 91. And I'm not sure exactly when Slackware originated, but I think it was like 93, 92-ish. It was pretty early as far as Linux distributions. It was all command line for me back then. Yep. That was my early experience as well. How is the Zen kernel compared to the mainline kernel? I think I touched on that. I think Zen kernel has optimizations for gaming and things. Linux Zen kernel. Okay, so according to the Arch Wiki, Zen kernel. Result of a collaborative effort of kernel hackers to provide the best kernel possible for everyday systems. Okay. And there are binaries available for Zen and based on Zen and Debian. Okay. All right. So I would think that would include gaming in that. Yes. Okay. My MSCS capstone project was writing a Unix file system simulator in ANSI C. Ooh. Wow. 1988. All right. Back in the true Unix days at the bank. Gotcha. System 5 is the correct designation. All right. My AT&T Unix System 5 was in fact 1986. Gotcha. All right. And I think that's a good place to wrap this up. We are now at 2 hours and almost 5 minutes. So thank you once again, everybody that came out today. This was fun. It wasn't what I originally had in mind when I started the planning for this live stream, but I think we recovered okay. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. Stay safe. as we get closer to those holidays coming up. And I will see you next week in the next live stream, and watch out for a new fog video to be released this week. Thank you once again, and I will see you all soon. Have a great day.